Hello and welcome. This is a video that I've been meaning to do for actually a bit of a while. It's on Reaper's own Looper Super 8. A quick note on the audio-visual elements on here. The recording you can hear in the background, that was all done live on Super 8 itself. A little while back. I edited this and put this up there last week, so this is that. I'll put a link to that below if you want to hear that without my voice droning on top of it. And also for a bit of visual variety, because let's admit it, Reaper is not the most stimulating thing to look at all the time. I've edited in a bit of footage which I've messed around with of Justin Frankell, Reaper's basically overlord. The creator of the man who also brought you Winamp, if you ever used to listen to that. So he has a lot of fun on his channel, basically improvising by himself with Super 8. He's set up his own template. It's a little more complex to mine. I've made mine for a very simple usage, but I've edited that in as well for a bit of visual variation on there. Now let's get this out of the way. Let's get the bad things about Super 8 out of the way. It comes with no documentation and it looks, shall we say, pretty awful. On top of that, it's a little bit fiddly to use and set up in the first place. But that's part and parcel of the flexibility that it allows you. And using the system that I've got set up, and I'm going to be sharing with you, there is of course a template for all this if you just want to download it straight away, or if you want to follow my directions and do your own setup. These are some of the ways that I've got Super 8 to function well for what I want to do. Okay, which namely has been to get perfect loops recorded with no problems as regarding timing and synchronization, and also give you breathing space after hitting record. And I know from using a loop station, almost the moment of hitting record can cause a blank, especially if you're using a MIDI trigger like a keyboard to do that, and you're playing guitar or bass. Going between those two modes is something you don't want to do in a split second on the beat. You don't want to be thinking about when the beat is. You want to have comfort to get into the groove on your own instrument. Okay, so these are ways you can do it. Super 8 is, as the name implies, it's 8-track. Now, I'm going to be using this partly for simplicity's sake as 4 stereo tracks. Now, for routing, it's a little bit idiosyncratic. Each channel has a virtual cable, obviously, and I've got the receives on the right hand side here. It doesn't like receiving stereo for some reason, so from each track I've taken a left send and a right send, so that adds a little bit of a complexity on there if you're mapping all this yourself. I've mapped 4 stereo inputs. It's useful to think of what effects you want to be printed onto the loops as opposed to afterwards. It's a good idea here as well to set and forget the input levels and use the outputs for mixing. I find as well, once the levels are good going into Super 8, you only really want to be using those output channels to do it with. Likewise, on the output section, you've got lots of possibilities with using send effects, insert effects. You could be compressing things to get them sounding smoother together if you were doing like a kind of live streaming situation. So you can kind of mix your loops afterwards and then send to effects. You could send everything collectively to a reverb. You've got the 2 sections. You've got the input section and the output section. They're all going through one track. I've got this set up as Super 8 on its own distinct track. It's actually very easy to use in one way, in that you start and finish the recording of an initial loop using a MIDI trigger. Now, that sounds simple in itself, but what happens if you have other elements already running and you want to synchronize with those? Okay, what this means is you need to send a MIDI notes to Super 8 exactly when you want the start and end point of your loop to be. So that's what I've got set up. I've got this on a track by itself, so this is initial record. So we're talking about the triggering on here. First of all, you need to define the length of the loop itself. And once you've done that, you can then add in tracks and it will record them to that loop length. Okay, setting MIDI notes for the triggers in Super 8 is an absolute pain. Remember, for stereo you need to set each stereo pair to the same trigger notes. So I've got these going up from, I've set the E on here as the kill note. F is record for channel 1, G for channel 2, so on. And what I've got is the stop record signal going on the sharps of each of those, so on the F sharp, G sharp, and so on. I've got another MIDI in here, and what this MIDI in has is a send to a delayed track of MIDI. Now this MIDI has two delays set up here, both of 10 seconds, and transposing up 1. Okay, so what's happening is it's basically saying when the next loop comes around, do this. Okay, but it enables you to basically be very hands-off with the trigger. This is a system I've got set up for triggering here. On the left-hand side, we've got a small mixer, a small MIDI controller, which I use for adjusting the levels. On the right-hand side, you've got a microKOG, which basically I only use as a controller for this kind of thing. The keys are pretty terrible. Okay, so as I say, below this video there is a template for a Reaper track which has all these facilities built in. I'd recommend that you basically download it and add to this with your own kind of adaptations. Hopefully this is a tool that can help you in all your endeavors musically, and as a bit of a sketch pad, I think it's the most useful thing to use it as that. I have done like long jamming sessions with it, and it's fun to kind of like mold the sound as you're going, bring things in and out, replace instruments, and it's inspiring. It's inspiring to use, but it's very, very ugly. And as I say, there's absolutely no guidance given by Reaper at all. And to be honest, it's free. Why do they need to? It's yet another toy that they've put out there for your disposal. Okay, so, well, thank you for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, all that business. And thank you very much. Bye.